Okay, so I'm going to go through a very quick demonstration of how to use Autodesk Design Review in conjunction with Autodesk Revit. And we're going to create a few markups within Design Review and then show how they can be overlaid and then used within Revit. So our first step is exporting a DWF file. So I'm just using the basic sample project here for the demonstration, but obviously this could be one of your actual projects. So you just select Export DWF, and here I've got all the sheets in the model, and I've just got those selected. So there's other tabs here where you can change some of the settings that you're exporting with. So you can see here we're exporting element properties. You can have rooms and spaces and areas in a separate boundary layer. But for this, I'm just going to leave it as the default settings. There's also the project information. This information, it's normally what you'd associate with the project information within Revit, and that will be exported to the DWF file as well. But as I said, I'm just going to leave everything at default, and I'm going to export that to my demo folder. Now, depending on the size of your project, it could take quite a while to export to DWF. For anyone that's exported DWF files in the past for Costex, and they've been dealing with quite large projects, they'd know that this could take, say up to, 10 minutes or so, depending on the project. You can also export 3D views, which we haven't done in this instance, but that will, at times, make it easier for engineers to understand when they're marking up. But yeah, for today's example, we're just using the drawing sheets. So in Design Review, so this is Design Review 2018. There's not a lot of changes compared to Design Review 2013, but it does have the functionality to tie into BIM 360. So I'm just going to open up my sample project, and so this is what the interface looks like once you have your file open. So you can see here that we've got a list of sheets, and they're in thumbnail view, and it's just a single click to go from sheet to sheet. We also have a list view of the exact same sheets. So if you prefer a list view, you can browse that way. We've got a list of markups, which there are no markups in this model yet, so there's none showing up. And then there's a list of model views. So we'll start with the markups. So it's all the tool sets or all the tools that you'd normally expect in a markup tool or a PDF editing software. They're all here. So you can see here we have a range of callouts. So we can just have like a leader with a text box, and we can say the roof is the wrong color. Oops. And you just click outside of that, and you can see that when I create that markup, what I've typed in there comes up as what the markup is called. And so you can come down here to the markup properties, and these same as Revit, you can sort of tab these, separate them all out, have it set up however you'd like. Don't really like it like that, but that's okay. Now I've got it upside down. Again, that's okay. But you can come through and you can make changes. If you got the name wrong, you can add notes, and you can, so please refer to the specification document for the correct coloring. And you can see that it's got the history, so you can see that I have created the markup and I've created it at this time. And there's also the status of the markup. So we've got for review, we've got if it's a question, and that it's done. So normally you wouldn't have that, or sorry, you wouldn't change that when you're in design review. That's more so used once these markups make their way back into Revit. But for now, we'll just keep looking through at the markup processes. So we've got our callouts that have clouds. So usually that's good for highlighting a box area. And so this one, the little callout marker is a triangle, but you can see we've got a square, a circle, and a triangle. So we can go check that these descriptions are correct. and you have to click outside of the text box to get the text box to sort of go away, or not go away, but to stop editing. Triangle, I would say, is not at all the best option to use. I would probably use that if you wanted to show a revision instead. So say if we wanted that to be P1. So if you wanted that to be P1, you could show someone that they've missed a revision cloud and a revision marker. So whereas if you wanted to highlight something with text, it's probably best to use the rectangle guy, and then you can go, the same thing. Check that this description is correct. So there you go. So you can see we've got our list of markups showing up in our markup screen there. So as well as that, you've got lines. So if we flick throughout our thumbnails, so we've got all the usual lines. So we could go draw, and all of these snap as well. So that's really handy. So we can pretend that we're drawing an extra room, and we could highlight. So this is a freehand highlighter. Not that this is how you'd mark up. It looks more like a small child's drawing, but that's okay. There's also a box highlighter, and of course you've got all the color settings that you can have. So we can highlight a pink box, or a yellow, or a blue, or a brown, or a black. But it's all all very handy. So you can say if this hatching here was incorrect, or this area needed to be hatched. You can see, and it's just a scroll in and out on the mouse there to zoom in. But you can see how we snap, and you can snap, and you've got this hatch that's done, and it's actually really quick. There's all the other usual tools as well. There's an ellipse tool. There's just a plain old rectangle tool. There's I guess what I would call a polyline tool. And I just right clicked and to get that menu to come up. So you can see here you've got a whole suite of tools that come up on the right click as well. There's dimensions that you can take, and the good thing about this is if you take a measurement in a PDF editor, normally you have to check that you've got the correct scale, but because this is Autodesk to Autodesk, it knows what's going on, so you can actually snap and snap. Now we're not quite straight there, but if we were perpendicular, you can see that we are at 3 meters. So as well, there's additional dimensioning tools. This one will let me continually dimension and even around corners. So that's great, and that'll take an overall length. So that is a good way to check paths, like exit paths. So with the arc tool, it maybe isn't that intuitive, but what you can do, or sorry, not what you can do, what you do is you draw a line, and then you actually click in the same spot again to start a new line, and then you draw the other one out. Well, it didn't pick up that line, so we'll just go back. And you can see there that that's now giving us our angles. So just to repeat that again, so we draw a line, and it's probably best to drag out from that line for the angle that you want to measure. So say we wanted to do the angle over to this grid bubble here, but then you go back to that center point, and then that gives you your dimensions, your angles. And then we've got stamps. So these are all the standard sort of, this is final, this is approved. Okay, so you've got all of those stamps, and they automatically fill out. You don't have to fill them out manually. And then you've got symbols. So the good thing here is that you can create symbols from a DWF. And what I would do, or what I have done in the past, is I've had a standard legend, which has been in AutoCAD in a DWG file. That gets exported to DWF. And then you can import that into Design Review as a suite of symbols and blocks that you can use for the purpose of marking up. And I find that that helps quite a bit because then you're marking up with the exact same symbols that your drafting or modeling team will be using themselves. Okay, so you want to know what that process is for creating these symbols? Well, firstly, I've got a Revit legend here, which I've then stripped down to just the symbols that I want to export. Now, I've already exported this to a DWF file, and you simply create a catalog from a DWF. Scroll through, there's the one that I've got. Now we can give this a name, but we can give it a name later as well. So I'm just going to go hydraulic legend. And we want to import each object on the sheet as a symbol. Now, that's wording that you should really take note of, because if you have text on there, if you have line work on there, all of those kind of things, that will come in as an individual symbol. So that's why I've edited this view to show only exactly what I want. So the other thing is, like this symbol here, this is going to break a little bit, so you'd really want to have those scaled up a little bit more. So you may need to, in some instances, customize your legend a little bit, but I mean, it's really as simple as this. So what will happen when you import this, it'll ask you, well, where do you want to take the information for the names of each of these symbols? So, I mean, we got the type name, and it's as simple as that. It could be a parameter. As you can see, there's a couple of parameters there. But what you will find is that they're type parameters, they're not instance parameters. So we go type name and go OK. And we can see that we've successfully imported 42 symbols, and that's how quick it was. So now, under symbols, we have our hydraulic legend, and we have our list of symbols. Now, I will say that this is definitely one thing that the PDF editing software has over design review, and I can't believe that Autodesk hasn't set this up yet. But what we really need is a panel with all of the symbols, very much like the tool palette that you used to have in AutoCAD, or you still have in AutoCAD, but I haven't used it in a very long time. But I had all of my block libraries in there, and I could just drag and drop them into my sheet. Whereas here we have to go through a menu. So this is a little bit of a clunky workflow. But you can see then, so we've got a balancing valve and we drop it in. And again, a strainer, and all the symbols are there. And all the symbols are scalable as well. So, you know, we've got a gully here, well, that needs to be bigger. Or there's a drainage pit or something similar like that. So we've got a trench, so you can stretch that trench out, although you can't sort of stretch it not as a, you know, it's a scale, not a stretch. But you could always Control C, Control V as your shortcuts, keyboard shortcuts, and there you go, the trench is coming on. So, you know, then you've got the markup, you come back to the markup, and we want to start drawing our pipe work. And of course, pipe does not go through a balancing, drainage doesn't go through a balancing valve, but you can see how easy it is. And so, you know, from Revit, from AutoCAD, building up your symbol library for DWF is a piece of cake. So we can also compare sheets. So if we've got two different versions, and you can see here we've got BIM 360 docs, design review discussions, right? So you can see that, you know, when we've got this list of markups here and we've got our markup and measure tool, you can see that when we create our markups, they're all collating in this list here, which, you know, is really quite handy. We can minimize per sheet, but it lets us see that we can, you know, what we've done. We can go straight to that markup, so we can understand what we've drawn and why. And it's always probably a good idea to add notes or give objects names. here I keep clicking Control A to try and do this label, but that doesn't work. So we'll just highlight that manually. So we'll go, please drop in a new room roughly to these dimensions, because I'm sure that's how architecture works. But yeah, so we've got all that there. Now all we need to do to bring this back into Revit is we just save the document. But I'm going to do a save as, and I'm just going to put my initials on the end, so that's my markups. Okay, now we're back in Revit, and we go to the Insert tab on the ribbon, and there's this DWF button, DWF Markup button. Now this has been here for quite a long time, I think since 2013, 2014, and most people have never really even asked what it's for. But this is what it's for, is it's for this design review workflow. So if you see here, we've got our markup with my initials on the end. So we open up that, and a Revit will warn you that some sheets have no markups. Actually, this is a trick for you as well. You need to make sure that the file is closed. So you can't be doing this on the same machine with the file open because it won't load it up. So again, we'll load that up. Now that shows only the sheets that have the markups. So we select them and bring them in, and you can see there's our markups on our drawings. Now you might think, oh, well, you know, what's the point of this? It's on the drawing sheet. Well, you know, okay, so sure, schedules, you have to go into the schedule and have a look at them. But for actual drawings, so if we go on through to the drawings, we can activate the view and we can make the changes. So here we go, here's our new room, which looks pretty terrible, but there it is. So we've got our walls there, and now that we've got those walls, we can deactivate the view, and we can select our markup. So in this instance, I'm going to select all of those markups just there. And you can change the status. So you can change that to for review. You can add additional notes. Yeah, hey, I tried my best, but your markups are pretty rubbish. Which we should be telling all engineers and architects that do terrible markups. We can review the history, which there's no history on that at the moment. But yeah, so we can also hide the markups, but you have to be in the sheet view. So you can see here, you can untick and away it goes. You can also go through, just like in a DWG, go through and select each of the individual markups to turn off. But if you don't want them there, they're gone. You don't have to unload the DWF. So as well, you know, so you can come here and you can go, right, I've got a question. Say, I really have no idea what you're trying to do here. Because, I mean, really, it's a terrible markup. But you can see how easy it is. So this all integrates with Revit quite nicely. So you can see I've added these notes to this drawing. So now what we can do is we can once again export our DWF. We're going to select all the sheets in the model again. And I'm just going to rename this. Whoops. Let's try that again. I'll just go second round. I mean, normally this would take a few days, so you know, you'd have dates on there and whatnot, but just because I'm doing this all at once, I'm creating terrible names. But that's okay. So again, takes a few minutes to export. Okay, now that we're done, go back to design review. We're going to open up our second round. And let's go and have a look at that sheet that we changed. So you can see now our markups are highlighted purple. Now the reason for that is because that's been marked as for review. And you can see here there's the history. So the status changed to a review, and it's got my note in there. I tried my best, but your markups are pretty rubbish. Fantastic, it's all there. So at the moment, and you can see that each one of these has that same comment on them. So now you can either mark it as done, and if you mark it as done, the color will change again. And then the modeler, when they get back into their project, they'll know that their markup's completed. So again, this one here is green. So you can see that's marked for a question. So you can say, I really have no idea what you're trying to do. Okay, so as the engineer, I know that's what the drafter or the modeler was asking. So depending on how nice of an engineer you are, you could go, oh, hey, this is a pool, or you could go, this is a pool, you idiot. Because that's how it works in the drawing office. Well, I hope not, but you know, I'm pretty sure it does. But there you go. So, and then you can repeat this cycle again and again until everything's done. So you can remove markups, you can ask for a clean set, which is always good. It works exactly the same way that you would with pen and paper. So whereas PDFs, you know, sure, everyone's carrying on about, oh my God, you can put PDFs underlaid in Revit 2020 now. Fantastic, but you still don't have this traceable workflow that you have with design review. So for anyone that's, you know, stuck on that Acrobat or Bluebeam bandwagon, as far as the engineering markup and review process and that workflow, I highly recommend design review, and everyone should be jumping on it. And of course, the best thing about it all is it's absolutely free. All right, so I hope that's helped everybody out. Thanks a lot for that. This was just sort of an off-the-cuff recording. There's no scripting here, as you could probably tell. But yeah, any further questions, come and jump on my website, ask some questions there, or you can ask some questions right here on YouTube. All right, thanks a lot.